it's like the button's in too easy of a place. You know what I mean? All right. Okay, so here we are back into classes. Now, one of the things that we're going to do today is, let me check my notes again. Right. We're going to start taking advantage of classes in a really cool way. Hold on. There we go. So I'm going to start showing you some of the things that we get with classes that make them better than functions. And one of the things we're going to do, or the first thing we're going to do, is we're going to allow ourselves to do a little bit of investigation, right? So let's go here to, we've got connection string, we've got get table. That's what I'm looking for. So, okay, get table. It does exactly what it sounds like, right? We're getting a table or a list of tables. We're getting their data. But what comes from that, right? What are the kinds of things that we usually need to know about these tables when we're getting their data, right? Well, one thing that would be really nice to have is a row count, right? So when we pull our class and we grab our data, how much data are we getting? Are we getting what we're expecting? And we can make decisions based off of how much data is or isn't there, right? So we're going to get the row count now, and it's going to be a really, really simple way to do this. So it's going to be a class property, probably. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
Okay. You sure? All right, y'all are going to have to cheerlead for me a little bit today. All right, so first we need a property. And I've already got one here. I'm calling it row count, and I'm making it int64. I just added it to the properties list, right? And so in here now, inside of get table, I've got my data set and my tables. So, and here I'm already calling something else. Let me do that. So now that I've got that, now that I've got my row count or my connection closed and I've got my data set filled, now I just need to get my row count. So does anybody have any idea what I need to set for this? Remember, I just created a property, right?
Yes.
Row count.
So $this dot that property name.
Right. This dot row count. There we go. And then I'll say equals. And now we just got to do something like, let me think for a sec, make sure I don't do anything stupid. Well, too stupid. Right. Okay. I lost my place. There I am. Okay, so I want to get the data set. Oops. Yeah, for right now, I'll say this data set. Dot. And now I'm going to get tables. But the problem is this is an array of tables, right? Because we can pull back many different tables. So right now, I'm going to pull in simply the first one in the array. So I want table 0. And we're gonna fix that in just a second. And then I want dot rows. Oops. Dot count. Right? So I'm setting the row count property equal to the count in the data set. So now I can see how many rows I have in my table. Now, Remember I said we were going to fix this part, right? What would we do if we pull back rows, if we pull back one table one time and 4 tables another time and 3 tables another time, right? That's a very dynamic problem, right? And you can't really add dynamic properties, right? You can't just add properties on the fly. So the way I've chosen to do this is to logically limit the functionality. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say if, I'll get my rounds there, and I'm going to say if, and I need another set of brackets as well. And I'm going to say this, oops, this dot data set dot tables. So I'm putting those inside of there. Dot count is is equal to 1. Then I'm going to do this. So I'm saying only if we're only querying one table do I want to fill the row count, because otherwise it's kind of ridiculous, right? You can't pull it from multiples, and you can't say, okay, I'm going to have row count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? I mean, no matter what you do, there's always going to be several less, or there's going to be one more, or something like that, right? So you can't mitigate it like that. So right now, a limitation in this is going to be you can only get the row count if you're pulling back a single result set. That sounds reasonable to me. How about you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so, right?
Yes.
So now we just got to call it. Let me collapse this because that's getting annoying. Can y'all hear my dog whimpering? There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to, let's see, get rid of this for now. So I call my class. I call my method. And now I just need to say, after I get that, then I need to say SQL call dot row count. And that's it, right? I don't have to do this logic again and again and again and again every time I query a table. It's automatically going to be there every single time. Here, let's run this and hope for the best. We'll call this SQL class. Oh, it looks like I may already have that in here. I'm going to call this 2, and then I'm going to go back to the other one and see. And I bet you anything that my server name is wrong. Localhost, yeah. Let's try that. There we go. And it gave me 0. For some reason, I'm not getting my data. I wonder if I've messed something up. Let me see something real quick. Okay, it's SSPI. And all the way down here in my call.
Is that because of the query returning more tables?
Say again?
Is that because of the query get table data returning more tables for the row count?
No, it shouldn't be. Well, I should be getting data too. So let me make sure. So I'm get table data, and I just want to make sure that I'm returning Is that return value? Okay, that's the wrong one. Okay, get table data there, return. All right, let me go back to the other version, see if I can, because I'm on a hybrid version right now and I don't like that. Yeah, this one's much better. Okay, this is the version that I was hoping to get. So let me grab some of that code from the other one, and hybrid version's just kind of so-so, right? So let me grab this and put that in here. There we go. Take out the this because I'm working with data set right now. Actually, take out, stop it. There we go. Data set. Data set. And this row count, which means I need to create the row count now, right? So I need to come up here and say, $64, and this. There we go. Add that to the properties. Everybody still with me? Okay. Now, code menu. Okay, let's see if this one works. There we go. So I'm printing out all of my properties down here. Let's see, what am I doing? Yeah, so I'm just spitting out SQL call, right, which gives me all of the properties. So these are all the properties that we've got so far. Remember last time we showed the query, and now we've got 76 rows that were returned. And if I pick another table, it'll just overwrite this, right, and give me the row count there. So this is a really good way to return multiple things, because yeah, you can return multiple things with the function, but it's a lot sloppier, and you can work with global variables and passing those back and forth. But this is just, I find this just a lot cleaner, because I don't always have to use it, but knowing that it's there is really nice. So see, I had something else on that. And another really big advantage of classes over functions, and I don't know if we talked about this last time or not, but functions don't enforce contracts, do they? Because I can say inside a function, let me go back to here. So inside a function, I can say function, at least I thought I could. There we go. My fun. I'll do that. I'll do that. Come in here, and I could say right host, hi. And then I can just say my text, right? So I can return multiple things here in a number of different ways, right, to the caller, and, you know, completely mess things up. And if I come in here and I've got these two, and then somebody else comes in and says, oh, well, I just want to do this, right? I want to say A equals, oops, equals 1, and then return A. So now I've got 3 returns here, and that can really mess up your script, right? But with a class, when I've got my my method in here, it's got a single return, and I have to return that type of object. So it enforces the contract. If I were to come in here and add a different return or try to return something else, it would blow up. So if I say return yes, right? When it comes down to the thing, it's gonna blow up on me because I'm not returning a table collection. There it is. Right? So it enforces that contract. Somebody can't come in here and just inadvertently add a separate output and that's it without messing something up. Nah. Control Z, 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 Z. There we go. That's better. So you'll get the whole contract aspect of this, how this is a much more stable way to code than just using a function that will literally do anything you tell it to. Excellent. Okay, any questions on what we've got so far? Adding the row count. Okay, excellent. So now we're going to add something else.
Nope.
And we're going to be really cool with this one. There are some times when you might get an error, like, because we all know that we shouldn't be using select star, right? So, or we all know that we shouldn't that you know, if we do a join with multiple tables or whatnot, that it's possible we get something wrong. You should have worked out that query in SQL ahead of time, but let's say you didn't, right? Because you've written this query a dozen times and you know it, but you misspell one of the columns or something, right? So it would be useful to be able to get some information about the table itself without having to leave your screen and, you know, look it up and all of that, right? Or write some other big piece of complicated code. So let's add that here. So we're going to add another method. Let me collapse this guy. And I'm going to call it getTableScript because I've already called it getTableScript. So where does this method need to go? Does it need to go on top of getTableData or below it?
Can be anywhere in
On
the
top
class.
of it.
Yep, it can be anywhere in the class. It doesn't matter. Very nice. So I'm going to add that. So what have I got here? I'm pulling it from SMO. And ultimately, I'm just calling the script method on the object. That's all I'm doing, right? So, and I'm going to return that script. So I've got this .table script. So is there anything else I need to do to make this happen?
Set the property.
Yeah, I need to add a property, don't I? And since I'm returning
Yes.
this .table script and the return value here is a string, then I've got to make that property a string. So we're going to come here, string, table script. There we go. Let's see if there's anything else I need to do. Let me collapse connection string. So far, we've got table, we've got schema. So we probably need to add table and schema too, because those are properties. Now, why would I add table and schema? I could, in theory, come in here to get table data, and I could regex this out of here, right? So I could take this query that I pass in or use the property, right? And I could regex that out and get the table name. How come I don't do that? How come I have to set the table and schema specifically? While y'all think about that, I'm going to go add table and schema. Okay, thinking time's over. What do you got for me? Any guesses?
Because we are using SMO, so that's the format of SMO, right?
Well, yeah, but I
the
could.
script of the object.
Yeah, but I could pull the table and schema out of the query, right? I mean, with regex, I could easily parse this, right? Whether or not it has brackets or anything, I could easily parse this. So why don't I parse it out of there and make your call easier? Prasant, you had something.
No.
Okay. The answer is simple.
Yeah.
A, I could have multiple result sets. And B, this could be a 20 table join. Which table do I parse out? Right? Hold on one second. Jesus, she just whines. Okay, so since it could be a multi-table join, because this, a single result set doesn't mean it came from a single table, right? It just means it came from a single result set. So here I'm going to have to set my schema and table if I want to troubleshoot, right? Because that's what this is for. Getting the table script is for troubleshooting. So before my SQL call, let's just make sure that we're getting what we need. So I'm going to get SQL call dot table. Oops. Equals, and then I'll say there we go, and then there we go. So now I'm just going to have to set my properties before I do it. So what I'm doing here is I'm writing something, I'm working with a table, I'm trying to get my new script worked out, right? Because this is going to be an include in all of your scripts, right? So you're going to have this class available. And you're using this class and you're getting an error in SQL saying that some column doesn't exist. And you're like, oh, okay, fine. So you're going to set your table and schema name. And there's my table and schema name. Okay, good. So I got that. Now all I need to do after I set these guys is call the method.
Yes.
Dot get table script. And I don't need to pass it anything because I've already set the properties, right? Now, we'll talk about that in a second. So when I get this, let me make this a little bit bigger. And, there it is. That's just the thing. Where is table script?
I think we have not set the table and schema property. We have not set it in the method.
Yeah, we did. Well, we set it here, right? And we're getting it.
Yeah, but not in the method.
So I've got this table and this schema right there.
We need to assign it, right? We need to do it this dot table equals table or something, or else we need to define it in the constructor.
We set it here when we called it. See, I'm setting those properties, right?
Right.
Oh, I think what I did, let me think. No, that should have done that. Okay, let's pull this again. Let's see. Table script is empty down here. So because I'm setting this, I'm setting it here, right? So I can return it and I have it again if I need to see it again. I don't have to do all that stuff again. So let's take a look. I'm doing SSPI there. This server, phone count menu SSPI, yep. All right. Well, let's take a look, shall we? We're going to debug this then, live. Haha. So I'm going to set a breakpoint right there. And I'm going to say debug. And so now it stops right there. That's that arrow, right? It stops. And I'm going to say step into. It didn't step into. It's supposed to step into. Let me try that again. Right there. Why isn't it stepping into? Let's stop that. Let me do it this way instead. Let me come up here and do it at table script. Why aren't you debugging? Fine, be that way. I don't know why it's not debugging. Okay, so I've got my connection. Get my database, setting this.table script equals this.script, returning this.script. Should be working. Let me, hold on one sec. Oh, I see. Okay. Right, so I evidently don't have, yeah, okay. So I had two different methods and I got them mixed up. So the problem is I don't have an overload for that. So I need to say sys.database is in here. Because in here, I'm passing it in the full name. And I'm parsing that out. So, yeah, there we go. And that's a combination of methods that got screwed up. Now it's SMOing. There we go. And I got an error. Excellent. Cannot index a null array, tables this screen. Why are you doing this to me? See, though, I like to teach like this sometimes when like stuff happens because it teaches you how to troubleshoot. So if things go perfectly well all the time, then you never learn anything. But these are not empty. Let's change this to a different table. Right, so let's set this to servers and DBO. No, I don't have to do that. I have to do that here. And let's see if that gives us anything any better. You see how slow that SMO is, right? Oops, not what I meant to do. Still an error. Huh. Well, I'll tell you guys what, I will get this working because I don't want to hold up the class too much, and I'll show you the fixed version and what went wrong in the next class. How does that sound? Because this is a mix of methods here. What I was doing before, and I clearly broke something because I'm in midstream, was I wanted to be able to pass in the full name and then parse it out. But then I also wanted to be able to set the properties, right? So in order to do that, I would have to have an overload, wouldn't I? So if I've got the properties set, so what I would do here is take this whole thing right there, like that, Control C, Control V. So I've got the entire body there, and the body will differ. And then give it that guy right there so that I can call it. And if it's null, it'll just use the properties. And otherwise, I can pass in the full name and I'll parse it out, right? But you can see here that I'm passing in the full name, but I never really parse it, right? So even though I'm passing in the full name here, I'm using the properties that I set. So this is clearly something that I started doing and never finished. So
right.
I'll fix that and we'll talk about that tomorrow. But this is just part of coding, right? But yeah, so that's always look, right? If you do that, then you have to actually use that for something. And this is going to be, and we're going to sophisticate this later. This is not a really good way to do this. So, like I said, we're going to sophisticate a lot of this stuff later. But in theory, when we get this working, we're going to be able to get our table script, and we're going to be able to look at the columns and see what the column name actually is, right? Or see which table it's actually in. Maybe we got it in the wrong table. So that's another really good way that classes with methods and properties are going to be much better than just a simple function, right? Sure, you can have a function that sets up, that scripts a table for you, right? But you're going to have to pass it in a lot more stuff. And I have nothing against functions that script out objects for you. In fact, you should have some of those in your profile. But this way, it's the object you're working on, and it's a lot easier to get to. Are there any questions or comments on that before we move on?
Can we use functions inside the class? Is it doable?
You can use them with the class, but not inside the class. And in fact, I'm going to show you that here. So the last thing I want to talk about today, and this is really cool. This is the way I code, right? A lot of people don't do stuff like this, but I find it extremely helpful to be able to do something like, I tell you what, let's get this out of here. Actually, I need to go back to class 2. for this one. So let me see the calls I have down here. So I'm just going to call help. Right? So let's skip the row count and let's skip that. So let's comment those guys out. So I'm going to create the class and then I'm going to call help on the class and see if I haven't broken that. That's you, dude. There we go. So I've written help. And here I've got properties. You can see what all of the properties are and what they're used for. You can see the methods. Right now I've only got one method. And you can see example calls. Querying multiple tables. You just use the queries like this with semicolons and so on. So I've got full help here available for this. And as I make changes, as I need to do things, I can make those changes in the help. In fact, I better, right? But because the problem comes in, in 3 months, you may not use this for, a couple months, right? And then when you do, you may not remember how to call table data. You may not remember how to call the method. Right now, that brings up a problem, doesn't it? If I'm looking up how to call the method, what's the problem? Anybody see the problem? Prashant, you sounded like you saw the problem.
No, I was speaking about having the help.
Oh, right.
Having all the content. How do we call in the future in case we forget what we have written maybe in 6 months?
So the problem is, if I'm going to look up how to call the method, don't I have to instantiate the method in order to call the help method? Don't I have to instantiate the class in order to call the help method? So if I'm looking up how to instantiate the class, I have to instantiate the class in order to pull up the help, don't I? Because it's a method inside the help.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a hole, right? That doesn't do me much good. So instead, this is a good use for a function. I've put this inside of a function, and I'm calling it function help class, help SQL class, because SQL class is the name of my class. And inside of here, I've just got all my stuff in here. We'll talk more in detail about how I built that later, probably in another class, because we're running short of time now. So now, instead of having to instantiate the class in order to find out how to instantiate the class, I can just call my help SQL class function. So if I do this guy, let me get, there we go. And I can just say help SQL class. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do that, I get that it's the query SQL class. And I think I need to pass it. Let me see what I did here. That equals null. I see. Okay. So I need to pass it all then, because there's a hole in my function. So I need to pass it all. There we go. So now I get for the whole class. There's my header, properties, methods, examples, right? Everything looks good. But I can also say I only want properties. And so now I've just got the properties. Or I just want methods. So now I just get my methods. Or I just want this method. I want to figure out how that method gets called. And so there's my class, there's that method, and there are the examples that go with that method. Everything's lovely, right? Fully documented inside the class itself, sure, but you know, also inside the function. So here, I also want to be able to call from, I also want to be able to call it as a method inside the class, right? Because that's just handy, right? Being able to call help multiple ways, being able to do things multiple ways is really, really good. It's really intuitive. So I also want to be able to call this from the method itself, like this, right? As a method. How would I do that?
Creating a method and returning all of these inside the class.
Yeah, I've got that here, right? This in particular is the function. Notice it's outside the class. And I do have my help methods here, right?
Okay.
But now I've got to maintain two separate pieces. I've got to maintain two docs, right?
Right.
The one in the function and the one in the classes, right? So how do I do that so that it's more elegant?
So the method calling the function.
Yes, very nice. Just have the method call the function. So no matter what you do, you can call the function directly, or you can call it through the method. And now you've got two ways to get your help and only one help base to support. Sound good? Excellent. I'll take
Yeah. So if we put function inside the method,
nope.
calling the function would remain same, or
the function,
it would be...
The function will not be inside the method. Or you're talking about the function call.
Okay.
The function itself will be in the script, but it won't be in the method.
Right. We are just calling the function from the method.
Right. So unlike methods in a class, because the whole thing gets compiled together, a function has to already be created when you call it. So when you put that function call inside the method, that function has to exist, which means the function needs to go where? Ahead of the class.
In that case, it has to be in the top of the class, above the class.
Exactly. So what you'll usually do in this case is, and you start nesting your dot sourcing, right? So in this case, you'll probably have a separate file with your functions in it. Let me get rid of all this guy. Just this one. So you'll probably have a separate file with all your functions, and you'll dot source that in here. So when you need to add a function or change a function or whatnot, you don't need to open up your class, because those functions can be shared across all of your scripts as well, right? So, and you'll just have to write that new function. You'll just have to write a function for every single class you write. You'll have to do these docs, but you would have had to do it anyway. I mean, it's better than having to go through the code to try to figure out how things work and why things work the way they do, right? You can put anything you want in your function, including keeping all of your docs in a database and having them pull it from the database and doing a database call and doing it that way, right? There's so many ways that you could do this. It's ridiculous. You could put it all in XML if you wanted to and parse it out. It's just sky's the limit when it comes to documentation. And there are official ways that you can document functions, but documenting the function itself is one thing and documenting a class is another, and there's no real way to add documentation to a class that gives you anything usable. I mean, it's just kind of shut down in that respect, right? So if you want documentation, you have to write it yourself, and you have to do it, in your own format. You have to devise your own help system, basically. So I chose a simple help, and there you go. And if you stick with a naming convention, right? Like, I'm looking for help class. So help SQL class. It'll always be help and then the name of the class I want help with. Now, you could make one single huge function that's just a help function, and then you pass it in the name of the class, and then that gets way too complicated, and it's way too hard to maintain, because once you get, help for, 4 or 5 or 10 classes in there, you're going to have a real hard time maintaining that without making a mistake. So it's best to have a separate function for each class and just keep it simple like that. But definitely keep a naming convention so that you can always figure out what you can always figure out what the name of the function is going to be. Okay.
Yep.
Any questions on any of that? Any comments on any of that? You can throw roses if you want.
Help is always really helpful.
Yeah.
Trying to look how that is actually written, because it's taking good parameters like the module, names of the module. I mean, all methods, and the properties.
So here's going to be your homework. I want you to write help for what you've got so far. And I want you to add a row count to your to the method you have already. And as much as possible, I want you to do your own work. The reason why isn't because it's not because I don't want you learning from each other, and not because I consider it cheating, because there are no grades here, right? It's because there are different ways to tackle things. And I like to see how you guys tackle things, and then we discuss the pros and cons of each one.
Sure.
So
yeah, sure.
I've had students come in and with different methods. I give them an assignment and they come up with a way to do it that never even crossed my mind. And I was like, wow, that's actually a really interesting way to do that. So sometimes I learn from these exercises as well. And so tomorrow I'll give you a fixed get table method and show you what went wrong. And then we'll talk about the help in gross detail. We'll go over your homework and we'll talk about the help. Sound good?
Yep.
Excellent.
Yep.
I'm going to stop the recording. If I can figure out how.